This is the Genesee County Compassion Club show. Let's get it on. It's a beautiful day here in Flint. It's finally over 50 degrees. First sign of spring is today, I'm thinking. Like the first sign of spring. Man, it's been cold. 6 months of snow. I was talking with my kid the other day. I'm like, you realize we've had 6 months of snow? I mean, this is like the longest winter I can remember in a long time. And I was talking with a couple other guys at the club, said if we get, I think it's like an inch of snow this weekend, then we break the all-time record for snowfall in a season. So I don't know how I feel about that. Here's to breaking records. What?
Well, now hopefully there's not going to be droughts in Michigan because we had so much snow. Maybe that translates into having, better water tables up and stuff. Because that's where it goes to.
Oh, it's a good thing there. Yeah. Just, I'm not good for us.
After the first snow, I'm done over it, man. I'm like, get the hell out of here.
All you folks is you want your snow on Christmas and they can go away, right?
Actually, 3/4 of the population of the world celebrates Christmas without snow, so I like to be in that majority.
Consider yourself fortunate.
Why?
Cool. Well, hey, we're here at allpointstv.com. We're kicking it. We got John behind the camera making it happen. Thank you for being here, John. I'm going to talk about medical marijuana. I'm going to let you know what's happening with the Genesee County Compassion Club. Also going to have a special guest on the show today, joining me a little bit later. So before we get into all that, I want to share some events with you, let you know what's happening at the club, and also get you up to speed with some of the news events that are happening here in the state and around the country. So let's see. We got buses going off cliffs. We got bombs getting dropped in Syria. Oh, wait a minute. That's not that news show. Never mind. If you do see a cliff, don't drive off it. That's my advice for the week. Stay away from cliffs. All right. Upcoming events. We got our Adopt a Highway this Saturday. I'm hoping that we don't have to do this in snowsuits, but we are going to do this. It is this Saturday. We're going to clean up M13. It's the first cleanup on that highway this year. And I got a little report from Jan at the club. She told me it's not that bad. So if you guys could come and help out, we would really appreciate it. You can meet us right out on M13 at Vienna Road. We'll be cleaning up out there. You'll see us with our vest on. We'll have some extras out there if you want to show up on site. Or if you want to carpool with us, we'll meet at the club about 9 a.m. and then tool on over there, the other side of the county, and get that thing cleaned up. When we're done, we're going to come back to the club and we're going to have some food. Got some tasty food prepared just for those of you that decide to show up and help out. So volunteers, we really need your help. It's going to take a couple hours to get the job done, so it won't screw up your entire Saturday. We're going to bundle up, we're going to clean it up, and then we're going to get back and have some good times at the club. So mark your calendars, come out and help us if you can. This is our 10th year of cleaning up the highway, so the freaking thing ought to be cleaned by now, but unfortunately there are people who are litterers, and they can go to hell. No, I'm just kidding. We can get out there and help clean up, and we really appreciate your help, so please do. Obviously, big event coming up, 420. It's a week from Friday. It's going to be spectacular. I forgot my posters this week, but if you watched the previous podcast, I showed you what they look like. I do have the custom VIP shirt. You won't be able to get this, but I did. There's the back. Yep. And yours won't pixelate, I promise. But at any rate, we're going to have t-shirts. We got the hot dog man there from Davison. We're going to have a live band. We got the twist off. We got ping pong tournaments. We've got dog tags for tickets. They're freaking sweet. We got a lot of stuff going on 420. Tickets are $20 in advance. If you want to enter into the medicine contest, Taster's Cup, if you will, you got to get that stuff in there by now. You're running out of time, so get your stuff down to the club and enter in if you wish to get it on. All right. Other event I want to mention briefly today is obviously our soup kitchen that's coming up, and we'll be hitting that at the end of April. It is still a Friday, so don't get confused yet. In May is when we switch to Wednesdays. All right, but right now we're sticking with Friday. It's the last Friday of the month, so don't lose that. So come on in, Eric. All right, we have our esteemed guest, Mr. Eric Gunnels.
How's it going?
Thank you for joining the show. All right, we're going to be talking about some more marijuana stuff, not just politics. Okay? Okay? I'm just kidding.
Trust me. They're one and the same these days.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, we're going to talk about some other stuff this week, but I do want to get onto just a couple articles here, and I think this will kind of set the stage for this afternoon. This is an article listed in the papers, actually featured in a couple different papers around Michigan, and it's just talking about the current state of affairs when it comes to medical marijuana here in Michigan, specifically referring to the MMFLA, the board, the licensing, the lack of licensing, so on and so forth. Give me just a second to pull this up because I thought it was a pretty well done article, if I can find it. If I could find it. Here we go. So this article is by Jeff Smith. I think Jeff did a pretty good job of updating everyone, and I'm just going to go through the nuts and bolts of the article. It covers a lot of the stuff that we've already talked about on previous podcasts, but it does give you a current snapshot of where the system's at and where people are at in general. So obviously we have the Lara department, and words right out of the article here, trying to chop the state's current industry in half. 2 months ahead of the transition to a new, tighter regulatory system, the market contraction is a boon to dispensaries that remain in business. But it has sparked legal challenges by some of the businesses whose applications have been denied. It says here, even the facilities that remain in operation have only temporary licenses, and they need state regulators to approve their permanent licenses by June 15th. And that is their own rules. That's what they decided to do. You had to have your application in by February 15th in order to qualify. It has to be approved by June 15th in order to remain compliant. After June 15th, if your application that you send into the state has not been approved, you're not in compliance, and we have yet to see how this is going to pan out. Are those places going to have to temporarily close until they get approved? Will they be issued another ability to continue operating in the interim while their license application is reviewed? And just to reiterate the point, the board's only met once to review applications so far and only reviewed 2 applications, both of which were denied. So there's no current approved processing centers, growing facilities, dispensaries. There's nothing has been approved yet. And yet in the interim, the state is demanding that dispensaries shut down. So obviously it creates a problem here with patients being able to access their medication. They issued 200, let's see here, cease and desist letters to 200 medical marijuana business regulators, businesses, geez, oh Pete's, basically saying that they failed to apply in time, they applied without conditional approval from their local ordinance, or they filed an incomplete application. It says here that has left only 215 businesses with approval to continue operating while the state considers their applications. Detroit has been hardest hit with 158 businesses that were ordered to be shut down by the state, leaving less than 70 in operation. So I won't get into the article any further because that pretty much is the nutshell right there. But I mean, as you can see, obviously it's creating disparity in the ability to have patients find their medication, and it's messing up a lot of different things in the state here, to say the least. So am I surprised? No. But certainly, I mean, I don't know. How do you hold the state accountable? It seems that we are unable to do this. And maybe this is a question we could pose to Eric. Not that you're going to have the answer, because, if you look at just last week, we were reporting on the show talking about Nestle getting their approval to extract, 400 and some odd gallons a minute. While in the interim, the day after the podcast, the governor announces he's no longer going to provide free water to Flint residents while they still can't even use their water. And I've seen numerous posts of people, pictures, glasses of water right out of the tap. And it looks like something you wouldn't even want to wash your dog with, let alone drink or cook with or wash your clothes with. So quite amazing, the lack of accountability in our government. And it's not just marijuana, it's across the board. So, I mean, what do we do, Eric?
I would recommend that we elect people like Dana Nessel running for Attorney General. I really like her stance on everything, including the Flint water crisis. And people like me to state office or state representative. So, and the reason you elect these people is to get down there and do the job that they're intended to do, which is hold government accountable. Which is what the Attorney General's job should be for the governor's position, and anyone else in government that has that was derelict in their duty or directly. Exuding a practice of malfeasance. If it completely, there's misfeasance and there's malfeasance, and oftentimes the one is accidentally wrongdoing, the other one is deliberate wrongdoing.
Okay.
And basically, when you know better and you shouldn't do something, that's what graduates to a level of malfeasance.
Okay.
So basically, when people are, when you have offices that don't do what they're supposed to do, or they're being led or told by other officials, to do something else, they need to be held accountable, and that's just the way it goes down.
It seems like the only way that we can hold these people accountable is at the voting booth.
Yes,
I mean, the majority of us don't have the ability to go out and hire an attorney and drum up some kind of class action lawsuit. That's never going to happen for the 99% of us out there.
Sure.
But for the 100% of us out there, we all have the ability to go and vote.
Sure.
So
I believe it makes a difference. And I think that this year in 2018, it will make a bigger difference than we've seen yet. And I think it's important for people to think about not so much, the presidential races that have an effect on their life, but more so local elections have a greater effect on our lives. And so if we pay closer attention to them and our township officials, community, city officials, like I currently am right now, and also the state level positions, which I'm currently seeking at the moment. So yeah, I definitely, the Flint water crisis is bad, and something needs to be done, and the infrastructure needs to simply be replaced, and that's the bottom line. I understand it. I'm from the field of construction, so I understand that it's going to be a very costly project, and you understand that the entire city of Flint was pretty much built up and around all this infrastructure that was laid down long before many of the homes and many of the communities there and streets and so forth that are there now. So this includes ripping up streets, ripping up neighborhoods, backyards. Sometimes if it goes underneath a house, then it's an issue. I mean, you're gonna have to
get a new house.
Yeah, you're gonna have to evict that family, move that house, and replace that line.
Yeah.
Or simply make a new line that you dig and excavate around it to tie into the to the rest of the grid. But we are talking about the underground pipes, the infrastructure that is the problem. Essentially, you can run all the clean water through those pipes that you want, but by the time it gets through those corroded pipes, then it picks up those bad things.
Makes sense.
So that's what has to be done.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a major overhaul of the city of Flint to do that. And I don't think that the average person really has an idea of how much that'll cost. I think some people have some numbers out there, but I think even those numbers are underestimated.
Well, and I would have to point out the fact that Flint is not the only town that has this problem.
Of course.
The entire Midwest is actually riddled with this. And I think Flint's sort of been the focal point of this. But I do believe that it is just a tip of the iceberg, if you will. If you look at, you've got cities all around that are very old and with crumbling infrastructures. And not just your water, but other things that are related to that. And, cities like Pittsburgh are very old, Detroit, Toledo, so on and so forth. You could just go all over the Midwest, and you're going to see that this is the issue that cities are now facing. And I think it's almost discouraging. It is discouraging because of the fact that right now the number one thing that you hear from our officials, politicians, whatever you want to call them, is that they don't have enough money. I mean, and they're talking about having enough money to operate daily expenses, from paying the police and the fire to show up for work to, whatever it is they got to do, keeping the jail open, stuff like that. If we don't have enough money for that kind of stuff, how on earth do we have enough money to go and rebuild our cities?
It has to come in the form of a major grant from the federal government, and the federal government has to simply, they've either got to print some new money, or they've got to take that money from some other budget and they've got to put it into these communities that have bad infrastructure that are giving them bad water. And that's, like I said, it's not just a matter of just pushing a switch and switching over the water. It's a matter of replacing that entire infrastructure under those cities. Well, and many American cities are like that.
I agree with you 100%. Let me pose this question, because this is something I think a lot of folks out there ask, and we don't get an answer. And maybe the answer is there isn't a good answer. But, like right now, you have the city Flint residents. They're paying a higher rate than the majority of the people out there in the rest of the country.
I know.
And this is not just the city of Flint or the Genesee County. This is actually across the state. We pay incredibly high water rates here. And, obviously we're surrounded by fresh water. If we were in Nevada, maybe I could understand having an increased rate in comparison to other states. But that's not the case. We're here in Michigan. So my question is, where is all the damn money going?
Right.
And I think that is part of the discouraging factor when it comes to a lot of voters and people like myself that just feel like, this is just an endless pit. and all you ask for is more, but when I give you more, you throw it in the trash can. You know what I mean?
And I'll tell you, I know this for certain already that.
I mean, our roads are the same way. I mean, we just.
Roads are extremely expensive. I mean, the average road in Michigan is roughly around $300,000 per mile to replace. $300,000 per mile to replace. Yeah.
And is that just a regular 2-lane road, or we're not talking about a highway here,
that's
right?
a regular 2-lane road. And
$300,000 for a mile.
Yeah.
Think of how many miles of road you have just in Genesee County.
Oh yeah.
I mean, thousands, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and there is. I've made proposals at a local level to use the what they call a chip and seal program, and it's just basically a bunch of fancy words for patchwork. And they use a higher grade asphalt to go over top of existing asphalt where the road is literally crumbling away, where you have so many potholes that the pothole is repaired right next to the edge of the existing pothole that was repaired last year.
Right.
And there are several roads, especially in my community, where the roads were built over low areas, swamp areas, where in the springtime it takes longer for frost to come on the ground. Or the ground is additionally spongy in those areas.
Sure.
Many people don't know this, that in the foundation of roads many years ago, roads were just built over swamps, and sometimes logs were laid down. Sometimes gravel was poured right over top of muck, and so you still have the layer of muck and sponge. Sinking into the road.
Sure.
And so it's a compounded problem that way. And then of course Michigan has extreme moisture in the ground and extreme frost that goes deep in the ground. That takes longer to come out. That's why in the springtime you have road restrictions. You see the signs up that says weight restrictions on the roads. Those are the reasons, because in the springtime is where we receive the most damage. It's the thawing out process of the road.
Sure. And we hear this a lot from politicians about they get into the frost thing, and it's not. We're not the only state that has frost.
Well, that's
true.
Know
what I mean? And there's a lot of other states out there that have, equally tough conditions to deal with. It might not be frost, but maybe they got to build a road through a mountain or something like that.
True, but in mountains though, you have a more rocky substrate to begin with, and then the rocky substrate is often it may freeze and there may be frost, but there's less moisture, less thickness.
I agree.
And we do have
when you cross the line from Michigan to Indiana or from Michigan to Ohio, it goes from to. You know what I'm saying? Like all of a sudden the car just gets quiet and everything quits rattling, and you're like, right. Oh, I'm in Ohio. And you're right. Or you're turning back around, you're coming back home, and then I'm back to Michigan.
Sure.
So and I think the big thing is the mismanagement of funds.
Of course.
Is really what is killing a lot of people's attitude and destroying faith in government, because the answer is always more. We know that. But if we could at least see that the money is being used effectively and frugally, I think then people would be a little bit more apt to say, okay, you need a little bit more tax, we could do that. But when we continue to raise taxes and continue to have deteriorating conditions, it just you can't continue to ask us for more and so on.
Right.
So
and part of the solution is also addressing recognizing that vehicles and people that are spending gas money and driving on the roads, they are doing more damage to the roads than people that are not driving on them. So one aspect is we need to look at the gas tax, because gas tax is obviously there for that specific reason, to be increased over time as we have to create revenue to fix the roads. Obviously, the burden also is partially placed on the communities through their property taxes, and that is that can be levied also. But communities can, of course, if they want to, have their elected officials of a township put it on the ballot for them to have a percentage of a mill established for their general account to be put directly into roads. And if they specifically designate that category to be put into roads, it must be used for roads. If it's a city, you have the ability to petition a city. You could actually file a petition to have a millage put on, or at least put to the ballot to the voters who vote. And look, you have to remember too that your city mayor may not vote for it, but if they do, fine, that money can be used for roads.
Right.
Those are things we can do. I know a lot of people are fed up with it. A lot of people have actually asked me these kind of questions before, so I just kind of relay them for everybody to let everybody know.
Well, and I think that you're bringing up some good points, and I think that one of the things that kind of goes along with that has to be addressed is, again, going back to the actual use of funds,
right,
and saying, okay, well, how come we're giving $50,000 to this insurance company for a bond on something that is that really necessary, or how come we're?
Do you actually know what does the most damage to our roads? School buses and garbage trucks.
Okay.
And the reason is because they're constantly stopping and going, pulling
Sure.
off to the side of the road, and pulling back on the road. Of course, those frequent stops, frequent pulling on and off, especially in the springtime.
Sure.
It causes the shoulder to erode very badly. And those, of course, those are single axle heavy vehicles.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that
makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to use them. You know what I mean? That's everybody uses their roads.
Those are public services.
Right.
So I mean, it's we've got to.
All right. Let's move on here. I got a couple other things I wanted to talk about, and getting into politics and so on. We'll stick with that subject for a second here. This is an interesting article that came up, and I think it goes further to highlight hypocrisy in the government. So the ex-speaker, John Bonner, if you guys remember who that was, he was the Republican Speaker of the House.
Right before
Trump. So this is back
when Paul Ryan.
Yep, before Paul Ryan, that's right.
Yep.
So before he resigned, Paul Ryan took his spot. So this would be back when you had Obama for president, and John Bonner was the other guy on the other end of the spectrum there. Anyway, the guy, he resigned from his position. We all know about that. Well, guess what he's doing now? All right, this is the guy that, whatever. He's entered the marijuana industry, believe it or not. This guy just joined an advisory board of Acreage Holdings, a company that cultivates, processes, and dispenses cannabis in 11 different states. And he was obviously he just joined their board. So, that just blows my mind. Here's this guy that, obviously he could have had an impact on our federal scheduling. He could have done a lot of different things. He did nothing. And then leaves to go join something that is federally illegal. And furthermore, you're working with a company here that just states right there, cultivate, process, and dispense cannabis in 11 different states. How do you get away with doing that and not being considered, going across state lines, becoming a federal crime? If a caregiver did that, it'd be all hell broke loose. So, yeah, the hypocrisy is at an all-time high, and it just blows my mind here. John Bonner joins this company. And he says here, over the last 10 or 15 years, Americans' people attitudes have changed dramatically, he said in an interview. I find myself in that same position. Yeah, well, sure you do. All right, well, that's my rant on John Bonner. I got something else I want to share with you that's a little bit more relevant, okay? This is the approved list of pesticides for LARA's medical marijuana program. So this is if you're going to be a medical marijuana licensed producing facility. They put out a list just today, yesterday, April 10th, a bulletin from LARA, and it lists out all of the different products that you could use as a pesticide in your garden. Now, what you will not find here are your typical pesticides. You're going to find something that would resemble more along the lines of an organic farmer. I don't know how else to put that, but I'll give you an example. One of the things that you can use for a miticide is garlic. All right? There's no avid on here. All right? There's no forbid. There's nothing like that. It's all banned. You can use rosemary oil, neem oil, thyme oil, white pepper. They've got a few different fungicides on here, like bacillus.
And this is for the MFLA list?
Yeah, this is for the MMFLA. So,
wow.
Very, very tough list. Okay, and this actually mimics the list that you would see if you were out in Colorado, which they're having a tremendous amount of problems with at the current time. Many of the gardeners out there are complaining about the list that they're being provided, and the reason being is that if you were to go ahead and get a list of acceptable products to use on food crop, you'd have a completely different list. And marijuana's list, it was created, by LARA. I don't know who decided this, but they picked a completely different set of rules, if you will, a whole different list of what's acceptable and what isn't. And I'm not an advocate for things like forbid or these really strong pesticides, but they do have their place. And if you were in, like I said, a regular garden place, like say for example Wojo's, they've got an approved list of things that they can use on household plants. They've got an approved list of things that they can use for food or edible type plants as well. It's two different things, but the comparison here is quite stark. And if you were, let's say, a horticulturist, and you're looking at this list here, you're like, okay, well, it gives me a lot of tools to use, but what happens when those don't work?
Sure.
And that is going to happen. There are going to be gardens that are going to get filled up with things that they can't control. Natural remedies don't work any longer. Most of these types of items here that are on their list are really better off used as preventatives and not something that would be used to treat an actual symptom. So, like neem oil, for example. Neem oil is a very effective treatment, something that can be used frequently. And it is effective at combating pests and so on, but it will not eliminate your problem if you already have one.
Right.
So, and most of us that have been caregivers for years now recognize this and have to deal with this on a regular basis. But I think that this is going to cause some serious issues in the industry in the future, and being that all of the medicine is going to have to be tracked, seed to sale, and all of it will have to be tested. They're going to be able to ensure that we do not have other pesticides present on our cannabis, which is a good thing. But I think they're going to be rejecting a lot of cannabis as well because of the fact that they won't be able to control their pests. And this is a common issue. Now, obviously, there's professional ways of dealing with this. You can have actual clean rooms. You can have positive pressure, things like this that can help eliminate pests. And you're going to see some facilities that will definitely incorporate those types of techniques. But you're going to also see a lot of facilities are going to ultimately fail. And it's because of the fact that they're not able to use typical horticultural products to control pest, disease, funguses, and so on. And I know there's a lot of you out there that are like, yay, this means it's all going to be healthy. And that is a good thing. But, if you're a gardener, this might pose a problem. So, but it is out there. So if you guys want to check that out, you can go to LARA. Like I said, it is a technical bulletin. It was issued on April 10th. And it basically says the department approved pesticide chemical list. All right. And that's for the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act. All right. All right, so I got that out of the way. Review that.
Yeah,
I had a feeling that was
interesting.
coming.
That was news to me.
And like I said, it is the same thing basically as what you see out in Colorado. And if you have done any paying attention at all, you'll hear that they're dealing with some serious nightmares out there. And when you have these large businesses that have large, rooms, we're talking 200-300 lights, and all of a sudden the entire room's infected, it's catastrophic. Absolutely. So, all right, let's move on here. I do want to talk a little bit about our esteemed guest here. For those of you that don't know, Mr. Eric Gunnels is currently on the Thetford Township Board, and he is running for state representative in the 48th?
Correct.
48th District. 48th District runs right across the top of Genesee County. And I was going to ask, does it run all the way from Montrose to Forest Township?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, Montrose to Forest Township, and in fact, I have a map right here.
Oh.
The map, it goes all the way down to Davison.
Oh, really? Okay, so it's like a big L. Then.
Yes.
Okay. I was not aware that it included I think I was aware it included Richfield. I did not know it included Genesee Township.
Yeah, it sure does.
And also Davison Township.
Yes.
So that's a pretty big district there, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yep.
It's probably one of the bigger ones in Genesee County, isn't it? Geographically?
It is the second one, is the second largest one. The other one is the 51st District, and that's the one that goes all the way around the south and then ties up here. Okay. And then, of course, you have three more in the center. Yeah, so Genesee County is actually divided into 5 districts.
Okay. Yep. So here's the thing, folks. This is the 48th district, okay? And when is the primaries?
The primary is August.
Okay, so August 7th, that's the key date here. This is the primary. This is going to be deciding, who is going to be running on the Democratic ticket, who's going to be running on the Republican ticket. And for those of you that aren't familiar with voting, if you're not one of those two people, you got no chance.
Right.
And I hate to say that because I'd like to believe that, Green Party people would have a chance, or maybe an independent occasionally. But in reality, if you're not one of these nominees, when it comes to voting in November, you've got zero chance. So the primaries are incredibly important, and we want to make sure that you guys are aware of when they are and that you take time to go out and vote. And how many people are you up against here in the Democratic primary?
In the primary, there are 3 candidates, including myself, running for the sole Democratic nomination of the position.
Right.
So in the primary, I face 2 opponents, and in the general election, whoever the winner is of the two Republicans running in the primary, whoever the winner of those 2 Republicans we will face off in the general election.
So the Republicans get 2?
Well, the Republicans have 2 running for the 48th district. And the Democrats have 3 running.
Oh, I understand. So, but in November, it's going to be 1 and 1.
1 and 1.
Just like just like normal.
Yep.
Okay. So, when you vote in the primary, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can only vote Democratic or Republican.
I believe that's correct.
Okay. So, if you're like me and you could give a rat's ass about what a political party is, it makes it very difficult at the primary time because there's certain people I'd like to see that get the Republican nomination. There's certain people I'd like to see get a Democratic nomination. But unfortunately, I got to just go with the best choice that I can make. And in this case, I'll be pulling a Democratic ticket because I want to make sure I put my vote in for Mr. Gunnels.
Sure.
But that's something that you guys have to make that choice when you do vote at the primary is which side are you going to pull. So if you've got a heated race, a heated battle, kind of like same thing here with our prosecuting attorney candidate, Dana Nessel, also a heated battle, also Democratic. So even though I may be more of an independent voter, when I go to do my primary ticket in August, I'm going to be pulling a Democratic ticket because those are the races I care most importantly about.
And just so people know, you can vote on the Democratic ticket in the primary, and you can change your ticket in the fall, on the November 11th.
Yeah, and when it comes to actual vote, you can vote for whoever you want. Now, you could obviously go in there and say, I'm just going to go blue and pull it and everything goes blue on you.
Sure.
Or you can go through and line by line.
Yep, line by line. Yep. But you can't cross party lines. So if you're voting democratically, you only can vote for the Democratic candidates.
Even in the actual election? Or is this just the primary?
Just the primary.
Just the primary. Yeah, we don't want to confuse folks.
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Yep. So,
all right. Don't cross the streams.
So, yes. But there's right now the 48th district of Genesee County is a Democratic seat.
Yes.
Currently held by a Democratic candidate.
Now, is that Pam Ferris? Pam Ferris. She's our current representative, and I think she's termed out. Is that right?
That is correct.
So she's done, moving on, and it's time to get somebody new in that seat.
Yes. And I believe I'm the candidate for that job. And as far as the Republicans and Democrats, I am the only. There's only 5 of us technically running in the primary election, but out of all of them, I'm the only currently elected official. So I have the I have been elected since 2012 and was reelected in 2016 to the trustee position of Thetford Township. So I do have the experience.
Yeah.
I think this is a job for an experienced candidate. I think that while yes, we do want to see new people in office that haven't been in office before, when you step up to a higher office, it's good to have some experience under your belt, and
sure.
I think I come with that experience. So
absolutely. Yeah. I was trying to think of what. I mean, it's amazing these elections and how things work. What are your steps?
Right now, the first step is raising campaign donations and funding for the campaign. Just so everyone's aware, I can receive up to a $20 cash donation, no questions asked. Then I can also receive a check in the form of any amount up to $1,000. I cannot exceed $1,000 from a check from an individual. So you can make that out to Committee to Elect Eric Gunnels, and the whole purpose, obviously, for raising money, in case people are just not aware, when it comes to politics, when it comes to running for a public office, it is financially burdening, and the reason is it's all because of advertising. Advertising is a huge expense, and anyone that's ever had anything printed in a mass quantity knows this. So
the best thing for media companies is an election.
Of course.
Absolutely.
And so we've got to have money for materials, cards, flyers, banners, so forth. All these things matter to the voters because you've got to get your name out there. That's the important part, and people have to see that name and face recognition, see that you have the ability to raise those campaign funds. Especially, it matters too how much you raise, because it shows favoritism and support from the people. Yeah. And I would rather take as many $20 donations as I possibly can, because I'd rather show that I'm taking money directly from the people, because I chose the Democratic Party because I care a lot about my community and people, and I believe I'm a candidate of the people, by the people, and for the people. And so it just goes along with the whole theme of my candidacy and my platform.
Well, let me ask you about your platform.
Oh, okay.
All right, and I hate to do this because I think it's such a cliche when they say, and they get these candidates in front of them and the interviewers talk to them, news people, and they say, where are you standing on the issues? And I want to say this first before we get into them, because I think it's so stupid. It's not like the first day you get in office, they sit down and they go, okay, what 5 issues were bugging your people, and let's fix them right now.
Oh, right.
That doesn't happen. We continue to talk about the issues every stinking election cycle that comes up, and none of the issues ever get solved. So, with that being said, where do you stand on the issues?
and my biggest pet peeve in politics is that the real issues that are really the more critically important issues are the ones that never get discussed.
Yeah, like I'd like to talk about, allocation of funds. I'd like to talk about appropriations committees and stuff like that. Or I'd like to talk about who the hell's setting the agenda and so forth.
Right.
I'd like to talk about campaign finance. Sure. But let's talk about what your issues are.
Sure. Basically, top of my issues are things like roads and schools. I'm a huge proponent of education. I really think that education is imperative to a good foundation of a society. The way I look philosophically, the way I sell it to people is, look, the smarter your kid is, the better my life and everyone else's is.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And that's just
let me put it to you this way: are you charter schools or no? Is it that simple, or is it more complicated than that?
It is more complicated than that, and I'll explain why. In case people are not aware of, your school districts basically get their money from the community, of the tax base of the community. So how this affects our state and how it affects
let me clarify. So that when you go into a rich neighborhood, okay, like let's say West Bloomfield,
right,
a lot of high dollar folks, high dollar homes, high dollar tax.
Right.
And their school is freaking amazing.
Right.
Right? Okay.
Yes, the best tools, best equipment, best learning environment.
Or you go to any inner city school, really, in Michigan.
Right.
You have a depressed economy. You have depressed housing. You have not just a depressed tax base, but you have a lesser percentage of actual collection of taxes.
Absolutely.
And so the school in that area is a reflection of the economic support in the area as well.
That is,
yes, I think is terrible.
I think it's terrible too.
I mean, on one hand, I understand. You get what you pay for. Right. On the other hand, if we're really about equality and giving people an equal start, which is kind of what the public school system was a part of,
right?
It doesn't work. We're not doing that.
That is correct, right? And inevitably, what happens is that you have the impoverished communities, the children that go to the schools in the impoverished communities. They suffer because they receive a lesser quality education than from a school that is in a higher tax-based neighborhood.
Absolutely.
And so
we're not talking about the teachers here. We're talking about the availability of classes, the facilities themselves,
sure, and
the amenities that are in the school.
Tools, right? All the tools that go into learning, and that's everything. And today,
you get textbooks from the 70s, and 30 kids that are supposed to share one laptop.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. We're not going to move these kids forward.
And also, I'm a proponent of utilizing technology as much as we can. Meaning that as we go into the future, I would like to see things. I would like to see technology utilized more in the classroom in the terms of videography and so forth. I think that watching a video or a documentary or something of that nature, I think it's a greater learning tool, and because the human being is very visually oriented and very visually perceptive. Yeah. So, of course, we can fit into all the categories of the special needs in those categories too, and however we can get them to learn as well. But for the majority of everyone, they're visually oriented, and you put visual with sound and a collage, of background information put into a video, you get more out of it. You can watch a YouTube video and really learn something from them.
Sure. And most kids nowadays, by the time they get to even kindergarten, they've already been watching YouTube videos for 2 or 3 years. You know what I mean? And so they're adapt to learning in that fashion.
Right, and exactly.
Not that they shouldn't be reading. I am a big proponent of reading as well. But
of course, I still think we should use a physical textbook. I absolutely believe that the physical textbook should reflect what's being put on the video, and the video should reflect what's in the textbook. Certainly.
But it's a lot harder to update a textbook than it is a video.
Of course.
Yeah. So all right. So schools, you're a big supporter of schools.
Big supporter of roads. I know we've got to do something about our roads. We talked about that earlier. But also, go ahead.
Everybody supports schools. Everybody supports roads. So those are kind of general answers.
Sure.
What is different about what we have right now? And give me a solution for one of these things. I mean,
like you're talking roads?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you want more tax money, or do you want to? How are we going to fix them? We know we need more money.
Well, sure. For one, obviously we all know that the M Legalized campaign, the RMLA, the Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol
CRMLA.
Yes. That is
another acronym.
Right. That is going to the voting polls this fall, and obviously that has language in there which is meant to provide a tax revenue base to go into roads and schools. So that's to start with, and I think that's a good start. I think it's fine. I think if we're going to create another to say, hey, if we're going to create so many taxes in some magical way, what would you do? And I think that any average person would, the two things would definitely be roads and schools.
Sure.
And not necessarily in that order, but just simply, look.
Majority of the people in Michigan, that's probably what their
infrastructure and education.
Response
let's go for that.
Yeah.
So that's a start. Now, do I think that we should be, here's where it's going to get complicated, is because I don't believe that we should put such a tax on cannabis that it forces people to go into the black market. I do not want to see what has happened in Colorado and other places where the tax base is so high, the average person says, well, why would I go to spend that in a dispensary when I could get it off the black market for cheaper and not have to pay that tax? I want to see people, and I want to see an economic stability in the market to where people go, you know what, I don't mind going to this location and spending a little bit more money if I know that extra tax money is going to go into roads and schools.
Being utilized properly.
Exactly.
Right.
So,
but again, marijuana's tax is not going to fix our schools. It's not going to fix our infrastructure.
And so again, we'll have to go back to the gas tax. And I know that people get nervous about that one because, obviously
I'm already paying like 40 cents a gallon.
Of course.
How much more do I got to pay?
Right, exactly. And and of course the companies that have trucking and shipping, they'll be nervous about that as well because obviously so we'll have to examine the entire code to see where I think a big thing is going to have to be in cuts. I think that a lot of our elected officials really don't like making cuts on anything because cuts mean sometimes the loss of jobs. Sometimes cuts mean we're completely going to eliminate a department of some kind because it's no longer relevant. I'm not afraid to eliminate a department if I do not feel that it's living up to the standards. For example, my township's cemetery budget and so forth. Look, if I feel that a privatized solution can work more efficiently for something like that and at less cost to the taxpayer with still the same quality product in the end, I'm willing to look at it. Do I think that we should do that in every department? No, because I do think that some public services should still remain public all the way.
Sure.
Like police and fire and so forth.
Right. You don't want to have a privatized police force.
I don't want to have a privatized police force. Not
It's
at all.
bad enough we have privatized prison guards.
Exactly. So yeah, and I really am against the private prisons. So
Okay.
I don't.
That's another key issue here in Michigan for
it
those
is
of you
a
that
key
are not
issue.
aware, but that is a big deal.
Right.
All right. So schools, roads, we know where you're at with that. We see that you want to be, fiscally responsible, possibly maybe get some more tax if we have to, but also taking a look at where's the money going.
Sure.
All right.
So
guns. Where are you at on guns?
I'm a pro Second Amendment candidate, and that's unusual for a Democrat, especially in this day and
That's
age.
what I was just going to say. You got a Democrat that's pro Second Amendment.
Pro Second Amendment, and,
Okay.
and that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not for a very logical, gun. Gun. What was it the word I'm looking for here?
Well, let me ask you this: would you be okay
policy.
with mental health background checks?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
And look,
Do you want eliminate bump stocks?
No, that's
Okay.
ridiculous. That is what a,
Then there
what
we
a-
go.
what a ridiculous idea. I mean, you can make a bump stock out of some wood and a wooden peg.
You get bounced off your shoulder.
Carved out. You're right. Not to mention, I mean, they make makeshift ones on YouTube. I mean, those are to try to say that something like that is going to make us safer is a ridiculous argument. And I'm up to the challenge to debate anybody on these arguments because I've studied this for a very long time. I am very fluent in understanding my guns. I'm a pro Second Amendment all the way. I've been shooting my whole life.
Well, one of the things right now that's going through Congress here in the state is the taking away need to get a permit to have a CPL.
Okay, now let me tell you why I think.
So for those of you that don't know, what that means is you can have a concealed weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Right now you have to have a special permit to be able to do that.
Right.
Michigan, on the other hand, is also an open carry state, which means you can carry around your weapon freely as long as it's exposed.
That's
and the
interesting.
legislature is looking at removing the necessary permit to be able to conceal your weapon. So in other words, if you're a registered gun owner, you could conceal your weapon and go out in public and you wouldn't need a permit for it. So where do you stand on that?
I am all for eliminating the permit. And the reason I say that is because I believe that, number one, that the permit created 2 additional felonies that a law-abiding citizen can obtain accidentally
By not having the permit.
or by simply having the gun in the wrong location, or simply
Permit's expired.
right, or as we've also seen, officers trying to conjoin the medical marijuana law or possession of marijuana or Schedule 1 narcotic with possession of a firearm.
Right.
Therefore, you're preempting this idea of the pre-crime notion of felony possession of a firearm. That's
Right.
what gets you into that category, and those charges can be brought about by that. So I'd rather amend the public health code so that we, first of all, and this kind of is one of these are kind of a 2-part thing. They kind of overlap a little bit, but I want to make sure they're separate subjects. And that is, of course, I do favor the legalization of marijuana. I do favor the bill that is going to the voters this fall. But I also think that needs more work. I think that we also need to recognize that the college students, the 18 to 19, 20 year olds, excuse me. Just kidding.
Because right now the proposed bill is adults 21 and over. So for those of you that will be voting in November, it's
over that nasty weather there.
yeah, it's 21 and over. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. So that's for adult recreational marijuana use.
Right, but I still don't want to see 18, 19, 20-year-olds, especially when they're going to school, they're in college,
have their life ruined.
Their whole life's ahead of them, and their life gets ruined all because possession.
Yeah.
And that's why I support Dana Nessel for Attorney General, because she gave a very, very beautiful speech at Hash Bash over the last weekend, and where the judge, she had a case where a judge had convicted a young man of simple possession, and then the judge's antics at the end of the case were, "Oh, see there, son, marijuana ruined your life," and then she replied, "No, judge, you ruined the kid's life." You know what I mean? And that's why I support a candidate like Dana Nessel for Attorney General.
Excellent. Let's get her sign up.
Yes, because I really, and just so you know, Dana Nessel's vote, she's running. Those of you that are members of the Democratic Party will have to get out April 15th in order to vote for Dana Nessel, because she's in a competition with another Democratic candidate, and the Attorney General position is a vote that can only take place for the party at the Democratic the Democratic Convention in Detroit.
Okay.
So we have to win by votes of support at the convention.
Oh, really? So
Yes.
this isn't someone that would be able to vote on during the primary?
We
then?
will know on April 15th.
Oh.
Right. So because on April 15th, either Dana Nessel gets the Democratic nomination or the other individual gets the nomination.
No, that's Pat Miles. Is that right?
I believe that's him.
And there's a third candidate as well, which who I'm not familiar with.
I'm not familiar with it either.
But so clarify for me. So in the primary in August, we're not going to be choosing from 3 different Democratic candidates for Attorney General.
That is correct.
We'll just have one.
That's correct.
So we're really not choosing.
Correct. In fact, I don't even think the Attorney General will be on the primary.
Well, yeah, why would
ballot.
it if they're already?
She will only be on the general.
That's really interesting to me.
Very
so that this position here, the party representative, party elect, is decided by the party convention.
Yes.
Not by voters.
Correct. Well, voters at the party convention.
Well, yeah, but not anybody can just show up and vote at the convention. Is that right?
You have to be a member of the Democratic Party.
Registered member of the Democratic Party.
I think you have to go into that particular caucus, if I'm using the word correctly, and you have to sign up to go in and vote for whoever your candidate is. And then once you're in that room, I don't know how this all works. I'm going to be experiencing this for the first time. I'm going down to the convention April 15th, and
the more you dig into politics, the more you learn. But that's really fascinating to me.
Trust me, I'm going to be grabbing my Democratic colleagues by the arm, and I'm going to be going, dude, let's vote for Dana Nessel. Okay, put your other sign down. Let's go for Dana Nessel.
Sure,
you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because it's about. I want to see the party unite, and let's get sensible people into office like Dana Nessel that have a common sense approach.
The nice thing about Dana that I would like to point out is I think that she really has. I mean, for lack of a better term, she's got a backbone.
Oh, absolutely.
The issues that she has picked stances on, she's stuck on it.
That's right.
And she didn't just pick a stance. Those were her stances before they became issues.
That's right.
And I am tired of politicians that just go in there and give lip service. If I wanted a used car salesman to be, running my government, that's what I'd ask for. Right. But I don't. I want someone that's got a backbone, someone that's got an opinion, someone that's going to stand up for what's right, regardless of the parameters or the situations or the dollars. And I think Dana's that kind of person. I think Eric is as well. I don't think these are the kind of candidates that can be bought. And that's what we need to have. So those candidates out there that are getting large checks, they're bought.
Right.
Someone already bought them. And we need to not vote for those people.
Exactly.
Those people will not represent you. If you didn't hand them a sizable check to match what that other person gave, you've got no voice.
Right.
And with people like this who are, obviously, grounds up, grassroots type individuals that do have a lesser of a shot because they're not getting the big fat checks, those are the people that we need to be supporting.
Right. And getting back to my positions on guns and marijuana, it's not that I don't support sensible gun legislation in the form of like universal background checks, because the NRA obviously supports the universal background check, and that's because
I don't think anybody without common sense or with common sense would say anything other.
Of course.
Who wants to give a mentally ill person a handgun?
Of course.
Now, granted, they could still go out and buy a shotgun,
and they could still go and buy one on the black market. They can, there's always the ability.
You're right.
To obtain it.
People that break the law don't give a damn about the law.
Exactly. Right.
Of course.
But certainly, we don't want to. We want to at least have a proper checks and balance there. Where look, we can all agree as gun owners that a universal background check makes sense. The NRA supports that. I support that.
It's a common sense initiative.
It's a common sense initiative.
Is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not that I don't support common sense. As far as protecting our schools, I have a very common sense approach to that as well. And I think that the Clio area school board did the right thing. I think that out of all the schools that I've heard doing things to protect students, I thought the Clio High School, which is my hometown, my home school. I graduated Clio High School. I was very proud to find that they got revenue. They found revenue to support a police officer to patrol the school areas district and be within 3 minutes of a school if any action was to be taken. And this is a very and I'm certain that the officer will be going in and out of the schools. But
sure.
But I mean this is not uncommon at all, because when I was in high school, once in a while, we would see a police officer walk into school. Sometimes it was the Clio police officer. Sometimes it was a Genesee County sheriff. Sometimes it was the state police. If they were passing through, if they had to drop somebody off, if they had to pick something up, they had to, do whatever. They were in and around schools. This is not uncommon for children to see a police officer in school. This does two things. It reinforces the idea that, look, we do have law and order in our society. You can't just go do whatever you want. You can't go beat people up. You can't go assault people. You can't go, you can't go get into mischief. You don't steal things. You don't, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. These are simple rules that we all want younger generation of people to recognize and understand. Look, this is about being an adult, and look, there's a police officer. You commit a crime, which you know is a crime, you'll be arrested. You'll be detained. You'll be handcuffed.
I think there's a lot of unnecessary fear that's being sort of ingrained in younger people, definitely, where there is a fear of the police.
Of course.
And almost in some cases, the police are the bad guys. And if we have police officers that are in and out of our schools and young people can interact with them and find out that, hey, that's a human just like me.
Absolutely.
And then I think that can help.
And the police officers can be good role models. They can also, but it's also, I like just having the idea of a police officer being utilized in a school as opposed to any other type of technique or measure put into place, whether it's a privatized security system guard or whatever. I like the idea of law enforcement because, number one, we need things for law enforcement to do and to handle, and why not have them in and around schools so that protecting our most valuable possessions.
Absolutely.
And then secondly, I support that because it creates a job. We could eventually create and channel revenue from other areas of the criminal justice system into protecting our schools in and through the criminal justice system. So this also makes a good avenue for us all because it helps create a job revenue stream for jobs. It helps to create opportunities for people and officers going into being officers. Obviously, if you look at the trends, crime is going down. So as crime goes down, and I look forward to repealing many of our drug laws and reforming marijuana policy, which in effect will also reduce crime in a huge way, I feel.
Sure.
And therefore, we need law officers I would rather redirect law enforcement resources into doing something else more positive for the community.
Serve and protect.
Serve and protect.
Yeah.
And I don't buy into this hype that officers won't do a good enough job. I believe that officers have it in their heart to serve and protect, and what better position to put them in than to protecting our children.
Yeah.
And I think that they're also the most and I would also advocate for better training for officers. I would advocate for just simply those kind of things. But I think that's the best way to handle school safety. So it's not
I think that the Clio,
even though I'm pro-gun, I'm not against I'm not against providing school safety. I want to make sure that those, because sometimes our Democratic colleagues can think, well, because you're pro-gun, you're against school safety. Now that's not the case. You know what I mean? You can be pro Second Amendment and not want to take away people's civil rights and still advocate for school safety. And that's where I stand in that position.
Absolutely.
So I consider myself to be a constitutionalist all the way. And before I erode away people's civil rights, I want to exhaust any and all other solutions or possibilities. And that kind of rolls into my discussion of marijuana reform or policy reform. I feel that the marijuana laws in this country are socially offensive and socially corrosive, and I believe that by ending those laws, we can bring a lot of peace. We can restore proper relations with law enforcement, and we can build back a lot of trust in law enforcement, which has been eroded away by poor and bad laws. And I think that restoring public trust in law enforcement is essential to a civilized society.
Oh, I would have to agree with that 100%. It really is.
So let's rest hand on those issues.
Excellent. Well, obviously you're on the campaign trail. You're going to be working hard, and we know that he, as is stated here, needs to collect campaign dollars. I mean, unfortunately, the money talks in the campaign world.
Right on.
So that's what I was going to ask you is, when is your next event? And we got it right here, April 25th, 2018 at Joe's Garage Sports Pub on Vienna Road in Clio. It's a great place there, by the way.
Yes, it is.
You guys are doing a fundraiser, campaign fundraiser. Go out, help support Eric. Drop off some money if you can. Tell your friends about it. And, it's about time we started having some people in our state government that not only represent us, but also understand us.
That's right.
And, I don't think that the majority of the folks in our government, at least in the past 8 years or 10 years since we've been doing this medical marijuana thing, very many of them have any clue as to what life is like for medical marijuana patients and caregivers here in Michigan. And it seems to be that a lot of our elected officials have a lost touch in reality.
Yes.
And it's so we need fresh blood. We need fresh faces up there, and we need people that are from our community for our community, like you stated, Eric.
Right.
So if you guys can get out to George's Garage,
that's right.
April 25th. Definitely, and I know there's going to be other events coming. We'll of course let you guys know so you can support. But to me, this is very exciting because it's about time we started having some people from our own community step up, and that's what Eric's doing. So I say thank you to Mr. Gunnels for doing that, because it's not an easy process to run a campaign or to be the guy sitting up there on the board. I've had a lot of people say, well, Jeremy, why don't you get into politics? And I've attended a lot of different city board meetings, state meetings. I would kill myself, okay? And I would be one of those guys that goes postal.
Frustration.
Because the
frustration is
the stuff that happens at those meetings is beyond my level of being able to handle it. Put it that way, okay?
Right. And that's because
Eric, you do. Yeah. You handle it, and I appreciate that. I know that sometimes you probably just want to drive a nail in your forehead. But
it is.
You got to sit there with a smile, and you do. So
yes, it's a way of and that's what my campaign is about. It's about bridging gaps, and it's about building a better future. We have gaps between our ideologies about things and our visions of the way we think the future should play out. One of the other things I want to make sure I mention too in this podcast, since I want to thank you and John and All Points TV and all that, and I want to make sure that folks know that this is kind of where I've established my my roots of not only activism but also taking away that shyness in front of a camera. You know what I mean? I got a lot of experience here from that. So on this podcast, I also want the listeners to know too that I intend on revising the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act when I get there. One of the basic things I want to look at is repealing. First of all, we need to strike out that one clause, the transport clause, because that was already overturned by the Court of Appeals.
Right.
So, since we already have a ruling on that, that certainly needs to be addressed. It needs to be struck right out of there. I mean, it was a ridiculous policy to begin with, and I can't believe that we had a legislative body that thought that was somehow a good thing. And that's just ridiculous. I'm sorry. It's just it's just absurd. I do agree with sensible legislation if it makes sense. And getting back to the concealed carry permit, I believe the Second Amendment is a true right. And what good is the Second Amendment if you cannot carry your firearm, certain places, or have it with you, at least in your vehicle? I consider an automobile to be something like a locker. You know what I mean? And look, if you have a locked case in a car, you should be able to carry it. You know what I mean? You should be able to carry that firearm in your car. Just
sure.
Like, you know what I mean? And there should be less questions. See, the rules right now are that you must be going to or from a hunting or to and from a target practice.
If you don't have a permit.
If you don't have a permit. But see, so not only do I want to get rid of the permit, but I also want to get rid of all the little hooks and hang-ups of the legal system that entrap a law-abiding citizen in where
it gets confusing.
Of course,
like I stated,
a law-abiding citizen can make a simple mistake. Like, for example, you might be able to open carry, and that's perfectly legal. But the second you step in your car and close the door,
it's concealed.
It becomes concealed.
Yeah.
Now, I disagree with that law. I think that law
and it doesn't,
needs
like
to be
you said,
revised.
I'm not going to the hunting range. I'm not coming from the target practice.
Right.
But
you
I was exercising my open carry right.
Right.
And the second I got in a vehicle, now I'm a felon.
Right. Now, exactly. And that is the biggest reason.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to subject.
Or I got to put it in a lockbox and separate the clip and the ammo and stick it in the trunk, and
Right. Even right. If the concealed carry.
And then I'm still not technically compliant because I'm not really going to the target range.
Sure. Now this is something that I've thought of, and I haven't really asked many gun owners, or I haven't ran this by. I haven't heard this from any other organization, pro or anti-gun. But I am aware that younger people, statistically speaking, that it is the 18 to 24-year-olds that commit most of gun crimes in America.
Sure.
Okay. Now, the reason, and here's what I'm going to point out. That is simply due to the fact, in my opinion, and I'm no expert on, I'm no psychologist, okay, but I do listen to other, doctors and psychologists and scientists who study the human brain and so forth, and they say that the human brain is not done developing until around age 25. And that the average 25-year-old, a person does not really become cognitively aware of or make their own, cognitive decisional choices until about age 25. And that's when the mind really starts maturing.
Sure.
So I understand that, I don't want to restrict gun ownership and restrict guns in any way, except maybe we should take a look at what the appropriate age should be to be allowed to carry concealed, or like I said, like we talked about earlier with the car issue, so forth, concealed. Now, if we want to make a permit process available for everyone 18 to 25, well, I'm willing to entertain that, and then say, look, after age 25, you don't need a permit. You know what I mean? Because we expect that now you're old and mature enough to handle a firearm properly, and you know better than to take it places you shouldn't, or know better than to make mistakes or do stupid things you shouldn't do.
At first, when you said that, I was, hair stand up on the back of my neck. And I'm thinking he's talking about raising the age to own a gun.
Right.
But no, the way you explained it, I think more people would be open to that concept.
And I think so too.
Yeah.
And I think
so young persons, just like you get your driver's permit nowadays, and back when we got our licenses, you just did the test. Here's your license. Now. You got to go through a probationary period, and there's multiple steps to be able to get your full driver's license, not just turn 16.
Right.
So it's kind of on the same sort of lines.
Exactly.
I think people would be open to that concept to discuss it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly. When they changed the boating laws.
That's what we need, Eric. We need new thinking at the Capitol.
Exactly.
And fresh minds with fresh ideas.
Right. And look, I realize too that there are some places like a school campus that that the average person shouldn't be carrying a firearm, and I get that, okay, but and that kind of mirrors what's been happening today. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Michigan State Supreme Court is hearing the issue on guns today, actually, as we speak.
Okay. I think of like my daughter,
both the Clio High School issue about the gun issue and the Ann Arbor School District were being represented today in the Supreme Court.
Clio should be reviewed. They've done an excellent job.
Yeah,
they really have.
Too.
But I think of, I think most people categorize and think of the young white male who did the shooting, whatever. But I think of the other coin because I have daughters. I have a young 20-year-old daughter, college age. Should she be able to carry a gun on a college campus?
That's good.
And in my opinion, absolutely, because she's by herself. I'm the father. I'm going to think she's always a cat's claw away from danger.
Right, and you're also pointing out too that she's a female, what we would call physically the weaker sex.
Sure, or more susceptible to being attacked. That's for sure.
Sure,
and I think so. We do have to look at both sides of the coin there. But at the same point, there are other solutions out there other than what we're being talked about.
Exactly.
And I think that's the important thing is to get those fresh ideas in there.
And look, maybe my ideas aren't the best ideas. And you know what? If someone brings forth argument to counter argument my ideas, and I look at that argument, and I've been wrong before, and I've had people give me a counter argument back to something, and I go, I think you're right. I will reverse my decision in my thinking, and I will agree with you on that. And look, as long as we can have a sensible,
seems like politicians only do that now once they get out of office.
Well,
i.e. boner,
because they're advanced for financially reasons. You know what I mean?
That would be the boner.
I'm an elected official that takes a more critical analysis on my decision making based on the common sense approach and logic and science, as opposed to making decisions based on money. In my experience as a township official, where I've seen my colleagues make decisions solely based on the money factor.
Oh, absolutely.
And that I think disturbs me. And
it needs to end.
And I think we can go through all the other decision making, criticizing with our civil rights and all these other things first, then we'll talk about the money. You know what I mean? Money should never be the first primary reason why any...
Well, and it seems often, I know we got to wrap our show up here, but it does seem often that we do have these debates and we do talk about the issues and we do bring up the points and the counterpoints. But then at the end of the day, the decision gets made on the dollar.
Absolutely.
Regardless of any of the other points that were given, made, or whatever. Yeah. And so I agree with what you're saying. And I think that it does need to be addressed. Obviously, finances are a concern for everyone. We know that. But if we continue to make those the number one concern, then we tend to lose focus of things that are really important, like the safety of our children or their well-being for that matter.
Absolutely.
So, and some things you just can't buy. So.
Right.
Well, Eric, thank you for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the coat of arms up to do this race.
Thank you.
I know it's an incredible burden, so I wish you the best.
Thank you.
And definitely, guys, if you can get out there and support Eric at one of his events, please do. Please share his information. If you're not in the 48th district, maybe you know somebody who is. Obviously, you need to be there to make it count. Make sure you mark your calendars for the primaries in August. And hopefully we can see some positive changes going on here in the state of Michigan. Mm-hmm. And again, Dana Nessel, I've talked about her on the podcast before. She certainly has my support, and definitely someone that is worth checking out. So hopefully she'll be on the ticket and we can vote for her as well.
That would be fantastic.
But that's about it for the show this week, guys. I appreciate you being with me. John, thanks for being back in the studio here at allpointstv.com. Thanks for joining us on the Genesee County Compassion Club show. Please make sure you join us for the Adopt a Highway this Saturday, and please make sure you come out and have a good time with us on the 420 party, which is a week from Friday. All right, guys?
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. All right, guys, have a great week. Hopefully it warms up here after the weekend. Keep safe, keep warm, keep healthy. Love each other. Bye.